Welcome to the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. We continue our week of getting ready for the start of the Cleveland Guardians season. On Friday, we'll have C.J. Nitkowski, longtime big leaguer, longtime broadcaster now, one of the voices of the Braves, but he does a lot of stuff for MLB Radio. That's coming up actually tomorrow on Thursday. Well, I don't know, depends on when you listen to this. But anyway, today we have Jim Rosenhaus. Jim, of course, one of the two radio voices of the Cleveland Guardians. Jim, always so kind when I've worked with him in the past, when I've been out at Goodyear or to Guardians games. So it'd be great to talk to Jim. The spring training games have just started. And where do the Guardians stand in the AL Central? We'll get into all of it with Jim Rosenhaus, one of the voices of the Guardians, when he joins me next, right here in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull.
You're watching Adam the Bull on the Bet Rivers Network.
All right, we are back, and we are now joined by one of the radio voices of the Cleveland Guardians, Jim Rosenhaus. Jim, when I was going out to spring training quite often early in my Cleveland days, Jim was always so, and I really appreciated this, Jim. I mean it. You were always so helpful to us. Like, we were new to, I was new to Cleveland, or fairly new. I mean, after a couple of years, I wasn't, but you were so nice to us. You were so helpful whenever we broadcasted there, and I really appreciated that. And I don't know if I've said that to you in a couple of years, if at all. So I just wanted to say thank you again for being such a nice host whenever we'd come down to Goodyear.
Oh, you're welcome, Adam. And hey, it was great to have you. And I know it can be intimidating sometimes because there's 9 million guys. Half of them have jersey numbers above 50, so you're not quite sure. And I know you guys wanted to get good interviews and stuff like that. So happy to help.
Yeah, and it was great. And I remember one of the interviews that stands out that we did there was the first time I interviewed Francisco Lindor before he had even made his major league debut. And you could tell, like, this guy's way more polished than the typical, whatever he was, 19 or 20-year-old AAA player, right? Like, you knew that already with Lindor.
It's funny with top prospects. Sometimes you hear, whether it's people in the organization on the front office side, or, oh, this guy's can't miss. He's special. Everybody's special when they're drafted in the top 10 picks. But a lot of them don't turn out that way.
Sure.
But Lindor, he lived up to that, and I think you saw that before he even got here. The way he carried himself, it was always just a matter of when, not if, he would make the major leagues. Number one. And then it didn't take him long to become just a key part of some really good teams.
Before we get to this year's team, I want to talk about one other guy I interviewed back in the day who was just we interviewed him a couple of times, and he was a pleasure to talk to. I'm sure you felt the same way. He was a great player, and he just retired, and that's Michael Brantley, who, of course, sadly is the last Guardians outfielder to hit 20 home runs in a season. But, man, he not only was he such a good – like, Michael Brantley's not going to the Hall of Fame. We know that. He's not a Hall of Fame player. But he's a guy that 20 years from now, you'll think back and say, that was a hell of a ball player, that Michael Brantley. Not a Hall of Famer, but he was a good major league player, seemed like a great locker room guy. I love that guy. He's one of my all-time favorite Indians/Guardians players.
I mean, when he got to Houston after here, right away he was Uncle Mike, which I think tells you a lot. And here he will always be remembered. And it's sad because he was hurt for the postseason run in 2016. I still maintain if he was healthy, maybe the results would have been a lot different. Might have not ever even gotten to a Game 7 against the Cubs. But he was such a big part of those teams. And when he left, they had some real searching to do to find someone to fill that gap. And in some ways, they still haven't done that. There are some certainly good candidates for that now, but he meant so much to what was a really good group.
I want to talk about on this new group, and that was a great group. You mentioned to me before we started this interview that you recently spoke with Estevan Florial, and I've been talking a lot about him lately because I think he, of all the young guys in the outfield, has the best shot or has the most upside in terms of power. He's done all he can do in the minor leagues. He's, now we find out, is he a 4A player or is he a legit major leaguer? He didn't get much of a chance with the Yankees because we know they're always bringing in veteran guys, and he never really got he got limited at bats, not great, but the AAA numbers and the minor league numbers in general are outstanding. He's a big guy. After talking to him, how you feeling about Florial right now?
He could be a huge key, and I don't know, Bull, if it's to start the season. Maybe they let him get going at AAA.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times with young players, uh, they play well down here. It's beautiful every day, nice weather, and all that. But then April and part of May, there's some off days. The weather's garbage. You got to play through some stuff, and it's easy to get off to a slow start, especially as a young player. So we'll see. But he's going to get an opportunity here this spring. There's no question about that. And we just talked. He said, "Look, they gave me chances in New York, but when you look into that, I think he was being polite." Because when you look into that, did they really? I think it was more, hey, they needed a guy because someone was hurt or there was a roster move and a pitcher went whatever. They needed an extra outfielder for a doubleheader or something like that. He really didn't get a chance to settle in. The power is there, and he felt he made some really good adjustments last year to maybe make a little bit more contact and really take advantage of his power. Because right now, strikeouts are an issue, and they may yet be at the big league level, but he's going to get an opportunity. And of his outfield position, he's a center fielder in his mind, which is great. So we'll see how much of an opportunity he gets. I mean, your incumbent, Miles Straw, I know takes a lot of heat from the fans.
And for me.
And he is fully aware that he needs to get to a certain level offensively, something we saw right after he was traded over from Houston. He was fine. But something's gone wrong the last 2 years where he basically hits with no power whatsoever. He has made significant adjustments this offseason. It's interesting, though, Stephen Vogt mentioned it today in his press conference, how everybody or a lot of players make adjustments in the wintertime, and what they try and encourage guys to do is stay with your plan no matter what happens in the games. But so often you see a guy go 0 for 3 in a spring training game and they go right back to what they were doing. So we'll see if it holds for Straw. But Florial could be really interesting.
Jim, you mentioned Stephen Vogt. I mean, it's got to be weird after you've been covering this team for a long time that Terry Francona is not the manager. First, that part. And then, you go from a grizzled old veteran, a former ball player like the current manager. But you're talking about a guy who's been out of the game forever in terms of a player versus a guy who just got out of the game. What a big difference. But how's it been so far?
Big difference in that way. From an age standpoint, absolutely. And managerial experience standpoint, absolutely. But what's pretty neat is Stephen Vogt has come in with a plan, helped by the front office and his coaching staff. And today was the first official full squad workout. And it was great. Look, spring trainings in most places are very similar, but they were getting stuff done today and it was running like clockwork. And he's got a kind of a Tito way about him in terms of how he looks at the game and encourages players. And, just the thing I was talking about, don't worry about an 0 for 3 in a Cactus League game in February. Stay with your plan and do what works for you. Do what, you made the changes for a reason. So there is some of Tito in him. There'll be endless comparisons, I'm sure. It's human nature. But in general, I think most players that I've talked to, they say it's been great. There's good energy. It's a young team again, and there's that. And it's different voices, but sometimes that's okay. I'm sure they'd be fine if Tito was still here too, but it's a new voice, and they're ready to roll with him and see what happens.
Sometimes it's good to make a change, even if the previous manager was a great manager. Mm-hmm. It's sometimes you need a new voice. Jim, two of the most important guys in the lineup, two of the best guys, certainly Jose Ramirez is the best player, but Andres Gimenez, got an extension recently as well. Neither one had a great year last year. Jose was banged up a little bit as he's been in recent years, but they need, obviously, if they're going to be a contender, they need vintage Jose in the middle of the lineup. And I'm sure they'd love to get the Gimenez they got in 22 here in 24. I don't think he was terrible last year, but he wasn't as good. So how do they look so far to you? I know it's early, and are you confident that those guys could bounce back to the levels they were at?
Hosey's fine. You
Yeah.
talk to everyone, and he plays every day in some form back home in the wintertime. Not traditional winter ball, but he'll get, I don't know if you want to call them pickup games, but he gets his live batting practice in because there's kids or maybe minor league players who live in his town, and they'll go to a field and play. So he's always doing something, and he's coming. He looks great, and the respect he has from his teammates is unparalleled. Jimenez, talking to him today, he played in the WBC last year, and he's not using that as an excuse, but it was so exciting. And then he came here and tried to build up again and got into some habits that didn't work for him at the plate. Right? I'll run some cliches by you. The one I'm not going to say is this guy's in the best shape he's ever been, because everyone says that in spring training. But
Sure.
He just felt he was trying a lot of times last year, trying to do too much at the plate and rushing things with his swing. So he did not have the offensive season that he had the year before, because he was just not necessarily trying to hit home runs, but definitely trying to do a little bit too much. And it led to a lot of easy, weak ground balls to the right side, things like that. So he feels like he's gotten back to where he needs to be timing-wise, and we'll see how it plays out. But certainly the potential is there for him, and we did see it at times last year, just not consistent.
Yeah, no doubt. And you talked about the WBC. He also signed that extension. You wonder now, a year later, no WBC, the extension, already behind him, if he kind of calms down a little bit. I expect him to bounce back. I think they'll both have really good years. Bo Naylor, we know, Josh took his game to another level in 2022 and then took his game to another level in 2023. Finally because his inability to hit lefties, I had kind of given up, I'll be honest, and I was wrong. I had given up. I was like, the guy's excellent against righties. You can't play him against lefties. And he proved me wrong, and I'm happy he did. He did a great job, and I love him. I love his brother, too. I think his brother's going to be really good, and I'm excited to see him play. I know they brought Austin Hedges as the veteran, but I'm expecting to see Bo Naylor catch 120 games. Is that crazy?
That's not crazy, and I think if he's healthy, I think you'll see that, unless he really, really struggles early on. But
sure,
I think it's fair to look at the last month and a half of a year ago when he was tremendous. I mean, it's seriously, statistically, OPS-wise, over 1,000. Nobody does that. So, again, smaller sample, only a month and a half, but he's bulked up a little bit, more for the rigors of catching that much. But I'm excited to see what he can do over a full season, and he will be the frontline catcher. Hedges knows that. I talked to him yesterday. Maybe he's a twice-a-week guy, but he is on board with trying to help Bo become the best catcher Bo can be, in addition to helping the team when he does play.
If this team is going to make a jump, we know the Guardians are not going to be top of the league in home runs. I mean, that's obvious. But you can't be last either. So if they're going to make a jump, maybe to get towards the middle, it's, obviously Jose and Jimenez are guys you expect, and Naylor to some degree. But it's Florial potentially. It's certainly Bo Naylor. And then Kyle Manzardo. Now, they got him in the trade last year for Savali. I'd like to think he's going to make the club out of spring training if he plays well, but we'll see. And even if he doesn't, if we see him May 1st or whatever, the power's there, the potential's there. He's probably their best prospect in terms of power, or at least their best prospect in terms of power that's almost, if not ready to play in the big leagues. Once he gets to the majors, whether it's April 1st, May 1st, or whatever, how big a factor do you think he will play, especially in that power game?
You know what, Bull? I don't know power-wise. I mean, he hasn't had huge power. I know he did in the Arizona Fall League, but I talked to Chris Valleca this morning, the hitting coach, and he said his stance and setup reminds him a little bit of Wade Boggs. Now, he's not saying he's going to get 3,000 hits, and he's not saying he's just a singles hitter, which Boggs at times would load up and try and pull one out. But he does think there's more in there in terms of power from what he's shown so far, which is decent.
Yeah.
So I don't know, though, that you right away comes up and you say there's a 25 homer, 90 RBI guy. He may grow into that as he gets more comfortable with his swing at the major league level. It's going to be really interesting because if you look at the roster right now, I don't know that there's a spot for him to play every day. And I don't think they'd want to bring him up here to play 2-3 days a week.
No. Yes,
so that's going to be the interesting part. Where do they envision him getting at-bats, regular at-bats?
Yeah. I want to go to the pitching, Jim, and we were having a conversation on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show recently about who, if you had to bet on one Guardians pitcher to win to be the next one to win a Cy Young, who would it be? And I said Gavin Williams because ultimately I think he has the highest ceiling of any pitcher in this staff. Would you be with me, or would you pick someone else?
And not counting Bieber, who's already won one.
Right, yeah. Right. Including Bieber going forward, but yes.
Yeah. I get what you're saying about Williams.
Yeah.
I thought Tanner Bybee, the stuff was not quite as electric, but really good.
Yeah.
Williams is just a tick above, but Bybee's got really, really good stuff too, and I think he's a little more polished.
Definitely.
So I'd go with Tanner Bybee.
Okay, I mean that's fair. The fact that you can make an argument for Bybee, Williams, McKenzie, Bieber,
sure,
and I would, if you want to get crazy, even Emmanuel Clase, not that a reliever is likely to win it, but that's listen. We know if the Guardians are going to make the playoffs, their pitching's got to be great. It's that simple, and they can be. I mean, they have that potential. They just got to stay healthy.
If Bieber's Bieber, and all indications are that he may have taken a jump back to some really good stuff not too long ago.
Nice.
And McKenzie's healthy, and I talked to him yesterday, and he says he feels good. Everything went according to plan in the off season, so you just hope that he can be durable enough to give you enough innings to be a real good factor. And I'm not sure how they manage that, but he's a difference maker. We saw it in 2022 for sure.
Yeah. Jim, we were talking at the beginning of this interview about, the 2016 team and all those great guys. Well, one of those guys has come home, and that's Carlos Carrasco. Now, he's not the pitcher he was in 2016. And like Brantley, he wasn't able to pitch in the playoffs, unfortunately. But we know how popular this guy has been. He's easy to root for. I don't know what he's got left in the tank because he obviously struggled mightily with the Mets last year. But I'm rooting for him to make this team. And I think it's interesting, and I don't know if this is their plan, if everybody's healthy. But early in Carrasco's career, he struggled a little bit, and then he went to the pen that year, of course, and he pitched great, and his career was fantastic after that. You wonder if it's full circle here, he ends up being an effective reliever. I don't know if that's the plan, but it's something I thought about. What do you think, and what do you think of having him back?
I love it. Your sentiments about rooting for – we're not supposed to root for guys, right?
Nah, baloney.
I mean, it's hard not to. Like, you hope he makes the club. That would be really cool. I don't think he's in the rotation to start. Yeah. The fascinating thing will be, do they envision him as a depth starting piece? So do you want him pitching every fifth day, piling up the innings at Columbus so that he's stretched out? Would he even go there? Or do you keep him here, like you said, put him in that role that he was kind of lit his career and put him on a good path? And then if you need a starter, he's there and ready to go. I think that scenario right there is most likely because if everyone stays healthy, I don't think he's in the rotation on opening day.
Yeah.
But I think he makes this staff as a long man, maybe something more than that too, and then they see what they have.
And it's such a young team. Having a winner, a guy who's, been through the wars, a great clubhouse guy. I mean, if I'm battling for the last spot, do I want another young guy or Carlos Carrasco? I mean, that seems to make sense.
Yeah, especially early. Let a young guy get going at AAA or AA, wherever you send them. Let them have some success so that they come up hot. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Scott Barlo, we talked briefly before we started the interview. I was mentioning I thought he looked a lot like Josh Hader, and Barlo's been a guy, well, not as good as Josh Hader, who's been a good relief pitcher in this league. He was a closer for the Royals. He was very good in 21 and 22. And then last year he struggled mightily with the Royals, but then he got traded to the Padres and he pitched better at the end of the year. What are your expectations for him this season?
I think he'll be huge for the bullpen because they've got to figure out a way not to overuse Clase and Stephen. Both of them.
Yeah.
Heavy usage the last 2 seasons.
Right.
So if they can figure out a way, when you look at the 1-run record and the difference last year to the year prior, it's significant in a bad way.
Yeah.
So many close games. Clase with 12 blown saves is as much as anything else. That's an indication of the amount of close games that the team was in. There were very few of those 3-run, 1-inning saves where, they're kind of tailor-made. So I think he'll be huge. It was funny talking to him this morning. He said the best thing about being here is that he doesn't have to face the lineup anymore because for a while there, he just said they'd kill you. Like it was hard to get through, and he had some rough ones against Cleveland, and so he's kind of happy to be on this side.
Last thing I wanted to hit on, I want to wrap it up with Stephen Kwan because I think he's becoming a leader on this team as a young player. I'm a big fan of his, and he came on the TV show recently. It was a great interview. I got a lot of respect for the guy because he's not afraid to talk about like mental health and stuff, which some players are scared to talk about that stuff. And I commended him because he was on MLB radio. I heard him about a month ago, and he was talking about how he felt like an imposter. He had imposter syndrome when he was a freshman in college, and like, how many players would admit that? And there's got to be a lot of young ball players out there that said, wow, Stephen Kwan's a big leaguer now. And he admitted that he had some mental things he had to overcome. I thought that was great, but he's also beyond that, a hell of a player. And you look at his WAR and a lot of it's defense because his defense is great, but his WAR through 2 years as a left fielder is up there with some of the all-time great players. Now, I know some people like WAR more than others. I have a lot of respect for the stat, but seems like a guy you'd like to have 26 Stephen Kwans on your roster.
Absolutely, and he's a straight shooter. He's a good self-evaluator. He won a Gold Glove again last year. But he said, I didn't have the year I needed to have offensively, and he wasn't that far off of the year before, but just enough. And he was saying that early on in the season he was worried about being dropped in the lineup, maybe taken out of the lineup. And Tito brought him in and said, "Hey, you're a good player. You're fine. You're not getting benched. You're not getting moved down in the order. Just go play your game. We'll ride it out, and you'll be good in the end." And he did pick it up as the season went on.
Last thing, Jim, your house is on the line right now, and you you have to take to win a chess match. Stephen Kwan, Tristan McKenzie, Bo Naylor, or I can't remember who's the fourth person in this tournament.
Hedges.
I can't remember. And Hedges. Okay, who are you taking to save your house?
I think it's over. Do you know who won?
No, I don't. No. Tell me.
I don't know either. They're going right now, I think. And I think it was down to Hedges and Naylor made the finals.
Wow, that's an upset right there.
Yeah, Kwani I thought was a shoe-in, but I'm not betting my house. I'll lose the house.
You're smart. Most people would bet their house, but you're going to be smart and say, I'm not betting the house.
We're gone for a while at spring training, then we open on the road, but eventually I got to go back to that house, and it needs to be there.
Jim, thanks, man. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thanks to Jim Rosenhaus for joining me on today's edition of the Bullpen. Great to chat with him. He obviously is optimistic about this team. More optimistic than I am. But I do think it's possible that if the pitching stays healthy, that this team could win a division because I don't think anybody in this division is any good. Kansas City, I like their offseason. I think they've improved some. But I don't think Detroit's any good. The White Sox are terrible. And the Twins, who won the division last year, I think have gone backwards. They've lost a couple of key pieces. They traded Polanco away after trading Arise away the year before. Sonny Gray's gone. So it's going to be interesting. The division is up for grabs if the Guardians can hit enough. We shall see. All right, thanks for joining me as always. Thanks to Monzo for producing. We'll talk to you next time. Where else but right here in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. See ya.